Now, 3, 2, 1. We are now live. What's up, Adam? We're here live on Couch and Chat. And my very special guest, Adam Murphy, is now here. And what is up, man? How you doing?
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm glad. I'm excited to be a guest on your podcast.
Thank you for coming. So me and Adam, or Adam and I, we met a year ago. A little more than a year ago as of now. We were both in Indonesia together, which was a super fun time.
It was a project. It was the Fulbright-Hays scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
We both got accepted to it, and we did not know each other before we met in the program. And by the end of the program, we ended up being best friends.
Best friends.
We were in the same class together. We ended up.
Oh yeah.
We ended up spending a lot of time together. We both got a gym membership at a sketchy gym downtown.
Whack gym, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess thank you for having me. I'm excited to
of course
talk about my experiences abroad and our stupid shenanigans.
A lot of shenanigans out there. Like, that was a really fun time. So I remember initially, so I came into the country, missing a flight. Everyone knows that story. Kind of costed the program a few $100s. I was so sorry if you're listening out there to the U.S. government. So that happened. I came late. There was like a cohort of like how many people?
It was about 10 people.
10 people.
9 or 10.
Me and Adam were the two guys, and there's like 3 guys. So me, Adam, and another guy named David. So we were the only guys in the program. So we were doing research, right? And we weren't allowed to say we were doing research.
We were doing, so the idea of the program is that PhD students, or if you do research in Indonesia, you can go abroad and look for field sites to do your research. So I guess I could start by giving a little background about what I did, who I am. Like, why is this guy? Yeah, who
the fuck is this guy?
So my name is Adam Murphy. I live in Connecticut. So right now, Jason and I are actually doing this podcast via online audio. Sadly, he could not fly me out to LA for this.
Sadly, I'm broke.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day I will be able to.
So I went to Eastern Connecticut State University. I graduated in 2018 with a bachelor's of political science and a bachelor's of history. And then I focused on Indonesian history. So when I went abroad the year prior, so 2017, with a program called UCINDO. I guess if anyone's listening out there, and give a plug for them, UCINDO program, U.S. Indonesian Society, they offer I think it's a 8 or 9 week program. You go abroad, you learn the language. That was actually my first time going abroad and going to Indonesia. It was my first time on a plane, which is incredible.
Crazy experience.
The following year, I got the Fulbright that Jason did as well, and we met each other in that program. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So why Indonesia, man? Like, what brings you to Indonesian culture? Like, why did you choose to visit Indonesia in the first place?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I'm not sure if my video is going to be up for everyone to see, but I'm not Indonesian. So I it's like that. Maybe one thing to mention too, I guess, if you can't see it. So I'm not Indonesian. I don't have any families Indonesian. I actually don't think I had any Indonesian friends in college even. But I did my senior project, my senior thesis on a lot of the events, the U.S. Indonesian relations in the 1960s. And I studied the conflict that was going on in Papua, the Papuan secession conflict, and the political violence that's going on there. So in doing my research, my professors, they said, hey, you have a really good project, but what would make your project better is if you spoke Indonesian. And they're telling me that the last language class I took was, Spanish 1 in high school. So I said, you're right. I need language background. So I just applied for scholarships to actually go to Indonesia. And it was my first time getting on a plane or being in an airport. Was the flight from Connecticut all the way to Yogyakarta, Indonesia, which I guess if anyone's familiar with international travel and how far that is, it was about 2 days of flying I think I had 4 or 5 layovers.
Mhm.
And so that was my first experience really traveling, leaving the East Coast. And I then arrive at the airport. It's 95 degrees, really humid, and I am just perpetually sweaty for the next 10 weeks.
So you talk about all this sweat and all this heat and humidity. So you experienced Indonesia for that first year, like your first time, being on an airplane, all that. So what brought you back the year after? Like, why did you come back?
The first year I was there, I had a very interesting experience, and I had no prior language experience, so I was in the elementary language class. We would go every day. I would commute. I would take a motorbike from my host house. I was living with a host family, and then go to class every single day. I had an amazing tutor who I became friends with, and I still keep in touch with. Jati, you met Jati.
My
Yeah,
man, Jati.
yeah, great guy.
Jati's a friend of Adam's. Yeah, they're very close buddies. So
So I just enjoyed, I just honestly enjoyed traveling. I enjoyed living abroad, and I enjoyed not just not just a week in Bali, which I think a lot of people might be familiar with.
oh yeah.
I enjoyed the experience of living with a host family, going to weddings with them, going to dinners with them, and just really learning language from that, learning a lot about Indonesian culture and society, which I had no prior understanding of. And I really enjoyed the experience of living with a host family. So when I ran into someone and they told me, they said, "Hey, Fulbright-Hays scholarship, they're looking for people to go to Indonesia." I said, "Sign me up." I then 2 weeks later found out I was accepted. It was one of those, it's one of those things in life that when an opportunity arises like that, you just always have to say yes.
Hmm.
That's really how I've been living my life so far, and I think it's been working out well.
It's been working out. That's the same exact mantra that I followed through as well. Like, it's been working out for me. So let's see if it keeps working out in the future.
As long as you just, I guess, even if you're a college student listening to this, if you hear about some sort of scholarship opportunity like that, just apply. Just apply. Even if you have some fear, you go, "Oh God, I can't be the one to travel abroad." That's what I said, because I literally had never been on a plane before, and now I'm sitting here talking about how I went to Indonesia twice. You just say yes and then worry about it later.
Yeah, just say yes, accept it, do it, and you'll thank yourself later also. Like, you learn a great deal amount about, like, not just yourself, but like others around you. It's such like a once in a lifetime experience, I think, to really.
Had you prior to the trip last year, had you been
Right.
to Indonesia?
No, it was my very first time. So, I've never visited my own parents' home country. It was my first time being there, first time flying out, like flying that far. The furthest I'd flown prior to this was like a study abroad experience in England. And I remember when I was getting my, what's it called? What are those shots? Japanese encephalitis shot.
Japanese encephalitis.
Yeah, you gotta love that virus or bacteria. I don't even know. Probably a virus. But I remember I was getting the shots, and the doctor's like, "Have you traveled before?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've been to Europe." She's like, "No, like actually travel."
Have you traveled before?
Like traveled to a country like this, and I was like, "No." And she's like, "Okay, you're in for something." She gave me this big guidebook. Like, you need all these shots, you need everything, all this and that. And in the end, I was like overwhelmed, just like probably you were your first time going to Indonesia. And I was afraid. I was scared. Especially, that didn't help that I missed my flight to one of the biggest opportunities of my life. I missed the first flight to that place. That's fucking terrible. But yeah, in the end, I learned a lot about myself. I'm glad I got to learn the language, because now I can like communicate a lot more better with my parents, and I got to meet my grandparents for the first time and got to really explore different places that I never thought I'd ever
Different
like
foods.
different foods. Like, okay, for example, I went to go see Komodo Dragons because you said in class that you were fucking afraid of these Komodo dragons because they could climb trees and swim. And because of that,
Not just climb trees and swim. They hunt in packs. And I remember we looked it up for a full day, just how scary they were. And then you still said, "I want to go see them."
And I went to go see them. You should still go see them. They're really cool.
I will one day. Eventually.
Yeah, the 1 week experience in Bali, or 2 week or whatever vacation experience in Bali doesn't compare to like being there, like being present in the community and just living there. It's a lot different.
I remember, I think it was in both experiences, both trips. I had, after you were there for a few weeks, it's
Hmm.
almost your, I don't want to say your adrenaline dies down, but
Hmm.
it almost normalizes. And it's at that point that you really start to enjoy and notice things that you didn't when you just arrived. When you just arrived to Indonesia, it is very overwhelming. There are new smells. There is
Yeah.
new things you've never thought you'd see before in the gutters on the streets.
Yeah.
There's, it's just, it was such a different, it was a shock for me, in all honesty. It
Yeah.
was just a shock. And then after a few weeks of being there, I remember I was riding with my host sister to school, and then we got to this one red light that we get to every day when we go to school. And I turned to her and I go like, "Oh, this light takes forever every day." And it was just at that moment when I started not complaining, but
Yeah.
yeah, complaining
Complaining.
about
Yeah.
a traffic light, something that's so it's such an everyday life problem. The same way I would complain about a traffic light here in America, and just
Mhm.
like, oh, this light takes forever. But it was once I realized I was complaining about those small things that everyone has that experience with. I've been here long enough that now I'm starting to see things, and it was just that moment that I remember that as the wow. The the adrenaline has almost worn off. It's no longer traveling. I'm actually starting to feel like I have been here long enough to understand
And you're actually living there.
living there. And
Mhm.
keep in mind, I still have so much more to learn.
Yeah.
That is what I learned more than anything. I
Yeah, as did I. Yeah.
I do not know anything in comparison to how much is out there, and there's so much more I want to know, and I want to go back and
Hmm.
live there for even longer than I did last time. So
Hmm. So we were there for approximately how many weeks?
10,
10 weeks, okay.
2 or 3 months.
So about 3 months, yeah.
Yeah,
Actually 3 months, a little more than 3 months. Yeah, we
yeah.
were there for a long time. I think after maybe the first 3 weeks is when it started normalizing for me. And when I started realizing little things too, like, oh, I have to get up this early. Like, oh, I'm recognizing this. Like, oh, I have to call this Gojek, which is like an Uber service for, using bikes in Indonesia. I was like, okay, this is taking forever. I started complaining about the little things as well. So I thought that was really interesting to point out.
I don't know if like we are complaining about the little things. I don't want people to think that we were just sitting there all day going, "Ugh, oh no, these
No, no, no. It
oh
was not like that at all. No, no, no. It's the first world in us talking right now, but no,
definitely."
it definitely was not like that when we were there. Like, yeah, we're kind of highlighting like what we were, concerned with and complaining, quote unquote, about. But in the end, the whole experience was just like it's different when you're living there. Like again, like we were saying before, like
I
you're
remember every day after school, or I guess probably once a week, there's this specific dessert called martabak,
oh, I
which
love that.
is
Hmm.
I love it so much. It's a bread. It has an egg in it. There's cheese
Hmm.
on it. It's very sweet, and I guess if you haven't seen it, there's food vendors everywhere in the sense they have carts and they push them around on the street and then they sell their food. So it's wherever they set up that day. It's like a mother or a father. They do it. They've been doing it for probably their whole career, and they've gotten so good at making that one food item. And I remember there was one specific cart and this one specific guy who made the best martabak that I've ever had. And
Hmm.
he halfway through our program moved where his cart was every day. And I loved it so much that I started asking people in the area on the street, like, hey, where did Pac go with his martabak cart?
Hmm.
It's just something I really wanted. And it was the fact that I was able to differentiate a specific Indonesian dessert. And I said, that's a good one, that's a bad one. And just know I was able to like have a preference as opposed to just going there and being like, oh, nasi goreng, that's good, that's bad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is fried rice. But like once you actually start knowing the people in the community and knowing
Hmm.
like, oh, I know this is a good food vendor, that guy you might get food poisoning from, like that, and just knowing small things like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah.
That was one of the experiences I really liked, especially from the program that you and I went on because we were
Hmm.
in such a small city.
Hmm. Where was that city? You want to talk about that? So it was so we were in Salatiga, Indonesia, right?
Yes, so Salatiga. What does it mean? It's the three kings, I
Three,
think.
yeah, something like that. Yeah, Tiga 3. Yeah.
It was something
Sala
to do with, or something with
3.
three truths, three kings, and it was a small city. So my experience the year before was in a larger city, probably
Mm-hmm.
comparable to Boston. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
about the same size as Boston. And
Mm-hmm.
then the following year, I go to Salatiga, and in comparison, it was I guess like living in LA and then living
Yeah.
in a
Some
not
not LA.
not
It's a
LA.
random place in SoCal. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was very different. It basically had a few universities in it. It was much cooler because it was in the mountains, so it had like a very good breeze, and it was such a beautiful place.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about like where we lived. We lived with host families, correct? And you brought that up earlier. So each of us had or were assigned different host families. Like I lived with, two professors that taught the university we were at, and they had pets, they had dogs. But Adam here lived with a very particular person who was very interesting, actually. Do you want to talk about
Yes,
that?
I will. I can say with confidence, she will never hear this. She was a great host mother.
Mm-hmm.
So I lived with so I guess keep in mind at this point I do not speak Indonesian that
Oh
well.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I only
Mm-hmm.
had my experience before, so maybe elementary at best Indonesian, and I ended up getting placed with I think she was about 75 years old. She
Right.
was her husband passed away about 20 years prior. She was a conservative Muslim. She spoke next to no English. And
Mm-hmm.
I just remember on the first day, I believe what she said to me. Now, I believe, I'm not positive, but she said, "You and I, we're going to be best friends by the end of the summer." She said that, I'm pretty sure. And so
Interesting.
it was a very modest house,
Mm-hmm.
to say the least. Everyone else in the program did not believe me when I described my house. It there was no Wi-Fi. I actually asked for the Wi-Fi password on the first day, and they laughed at me. They thought I was joking, and I said, and I guess that was my ignorance. Like, but I thought there might be Wi-Fi.
Right.
Um, so it was an interesting place to live. Um, a lot of times, older Muslim women they'll get up very early in the morning to pray. It's like right around when the sun comes up,
I totally forgot about that. Yeah.
way earlier than when I want to wake up. I guess there's very loud calls to prayer from the mosques that are surrounding communities, and then she would get up at that time to make breakfast.
Right.
So she would get up at about 3:30 a.m., make my breakfast. I would get up at about 7:30. My breakfast had been on the table for about 4 hours now, so I had never had warm breakfast. And the entire 10 weeks I was there, she always made me so much food that I could never physically all eat myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think my theory is she would take the food that I didn't eat and then give it to other people in the community because part of the program, part of the scholarship pays these families to house us. So they get money to spend on food and to make our food. And so
Right.
they're reimbursed for it. And so I think she would take the food that she made for me and she would give it to other people. But my food, I found out in comparison to some other host families, was pretty lackluster. I
Yeah.
think
Pretty bad. Very bad. Yeah.
I was in a very modest house in comparison to everyone else too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was not uncommon for a giant cockroach to crawl out of the bathtub
All the
drain
time.
all the time.
Mhm.
Occasionally, a rat will just run across the house.
That's a
Like
serious thing.
I'm not talking like, oh, this is a Petco rat. I don't know if is there Petco in LA?
There's Petco in LA. Yeah.
I'm
Petco.
not talking like a cute Petco rat. I'm talking like a rat the size of a small dog. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
like like a rat you could trip over, and it could run and trip you. So one of those occasionally will just run through the house or something, and then I'll just see my host mother like chasing it with a broom out the door. It was a bizarre experience.
Yeah.
So it was very early. My dinner was made probably at about 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I think I remember mentioning that, right? My dinner was always cold.
Yeah.
And then she would want me to eat as soon as I got home from school at about 3:30 in the afternoon. So
That's so early. And he would never get meals like after that.
that was it. That was it. That was like the last time I would see her too, because she went to bed at about 6:30 at night.
And the cycle would just repeat again.
It was literally day after day. I remember she so she thought it was in a neighborhood that was a little less safe apparently. So she would lock the doors from, I believe, the inside, but she would bar the door with a giant iron bar.
Yeah.
And put it on the backside. Like, I'm talking a castle. You know how they put the giant thing?
Yeah,
like
the
Game of Thrones style.
Game
like
of Thrones style, yeah.
They put that behind the door. She would do that, but she would do it before I got home. So if I wasn't home by 6:30 p.m., the door is already barred. There's no way I'm getting in this place. This thing was a fortress. And I would essentially have to climb up a wall, knock on a window to wake her up to let me in. And I always felt bad, like waking up, like no one likes waking up an old lady.
Right.
And I would have to be like, knock, knock, knock. Like, hello, it's 6:45. Sorry, I'm late. I didn't realize you already fell asleep. And she would go, oh, sorry. And she'd let me in the house. And it was a bizarre experience.
Yeah. This doesn't even encapsulate like what that experience was, because there's so much more to this story.
None of them, for everyone listening, no one in the program believed me when I described my house. Everyone thought that I was that I was like a princess or a prince, and I needed a luxurious experience.
Right.
And I'm not a luxurious guy. I'm perfectly fine living in anything. I didn't really complain that much about it. I just accepted this is how she lived. She's my host mother, and that's fine. And I think someone came to visit me one day and saw the house and like my food, and they met my host mother, and they went, wow, like just a wow moment.
Wow.
They went, wow, she is everything you did describe as. You were not exaggerating.
Damn.
It was crazy. Fun.
It was a fun time though. When he talked about the rats, that was a common thing for me too. Sometimes I would wake up from bed seeing a fucking rat just run across the room. Like he said again, not a Petco rat, but a huge,
scary one.
Huge small dog rat. And you'd see that all the time when we go out for beers at that one place. What's the place called? I don't remember. But it was it was really cool outdoor experience, and you would see rats running around all the time.
It normalized.
Yeah, it normalized. Like, okay, we saw rats. I'd go to the restroom. I see rats running around, like the size of this microphone. I don't know how many inches that is, but they were just huge rats.
I remember. So I guess this is a testament to your transition from beginning of the experience to the end. I remember we all went out the first week, and then we all were getting beers, and we're at this outdoor restaurant, and then you get up to go to the bathroom, and then you come back maybe 5 seconds later, and then you go, there was a huge rat over there, like, and then we're like, did you go to the bathroom? You're like, no, I didn't. I just came back. You were so terrified that like this big ass dog rat was there. And then by the end, you're like, prancing around them, just kicking them out of the way, like walking them down.
Tiptoeing around the rats. Yeah, it took a while to adjust, but yeah, definitely a bizarre and very strange and scary experience, to say the least.
But in the end, it was very rewarding.
Yeah.
Enlightening. I learned a lot.
Yeah, it definitely pushed me, I think, both of us out of our own comfort zones, which is really, really helpful for us, like, growing as well. So
I think that it took, like, I remember the first few weeks we were hanging out and we would go places, and I think you at that point still weren't used to being in Indonesia. You had not acclimated. Maybe that's the right word.
Yeah, that's a good word.
I remember we would be on the streets, and even if people would want to speak to us in Indonesian, I think that they looked at the two of us, and you are Indonesian, right, and they would direct the questions to me in Indonesian, as if I would know the answer, or they would ask us where we're from, but they just like looked at you and then knew, like they were like, oh, this LA dude, like
Yeah.
he's
I
not
was
from
wearing
here.
shorts like super high up. I was wearing my hat all the time.
And we're in a
I just,
conservative city.
very conservative. Yeah, like Indonesia as a country, like as a whole, is very conservative. It's a Muslim country, and I was kind of out there, I guess.
Yeah, and then but then at the end of the program, people
Yeah.
would come up to you thinking you were native Indonesian and had
Yeah.
lived there.
Yeah. It was a weird switch. I don't know how that happened or why that happened. Because like you're right, initially people would just disregard me and just talk to you. But then over the course of those few weeks, people were like, yeah, you're from here, right? Like you lived here? I'm like, no,
No.
not at all. I do not know anything about this place like at all. I barely scratched the surface when I was there for 3 months, like
Yeah.
short time we were both there. But okay, do you remember, let's switch to another story. Do you remember when we got that gym membership at the really, sketchy gym? And remember how I was talking to you about, this girl, I was venting to you about stuff. Basically venting to you about my problems in America while getting to know you. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Tinder? Is this where this is
Yes.
going?
I think
Okay.
this is going. Yeah.
All right. So as a background,
Right.
I don't even know how to set this
How do
story
we
up.
even say, how do we set this up?
So I downloaded Tinder when I was abroad.
Right.
And I thought it'd be interesting. I was there for 3 months. What's wrong with a coffee date or two?
Right.
Nothing. And so I guess I was looking for men when I was there, right? So I guess for anyone listening, like I'm in Connecticut, I normally would be dating men. Here in America, that's not really out of the ordinary at all. It's 2019, right?
2019, baby, let's go.
Yeah, and so when I was speaking to Jason, we were at the gym, and he was like talking about his girl problems, and then he turns to me and he's like, "How about you? How are the ladies?" I don't know. That's my Jason accent. That's my Jason impersonation.
Okay, perfect.
How are the ladies, Adam? And then I think I said something very gender neutral. I didn't know you very well,
Yeah.
so I was just kind of like, oh, but I didn't deny anything or anything. I was open. I just said, oh no, I made a joke like, oh, there's no ladies in my future anytime soon. And I think that's a pretty relatable stance people can have if they normally are dating men and they don't necessarily want to come out at that point to them. Mm-hmm. You might just be like, oh, no ladies in my future. And then you laughed at that. But, in reality, I was being serious. So fast forward to a few weeks from that point, and then I mentioned that this is an interesting story. So on Tinder, it was a fairly small city. There was not a lot of international people. And I remember I matched with someone once, and then almost immediately I got a message that said something like, "Were you the white guy at the gym?" Or it was something like that. "Were you the white guy at the coffee shop?" And it's a fairly small city, so I don't know how many international people were there or how many white people were in the city.
There weren't a lot of white people, no.
There was not a lot of white people other than the people in that school. I think I might have been, it was less than 20.
Yeah.
I remember getting that message, and then I told Jason, I said like, yeah, someone on Tinder was like, "Are you that white guy?" But I didn't say a gender of, what the person on Tinder was. And it just completely went over his head. He just had no idea. And I said, you know what? That's fine. A few weeks later, he then asked me again. He's like, "Oh, are you dating anyone here in Indonesia or something like that? Are you dating any women?" And then I was just like, at that point, I was like, "Jason, I have no idea how you have not picked up on this." I think I made a few other comments throughout the weeks that we were hanging out. And I was just like, "Jason, it's men. I date men. I'm not dating women." And then I remember you were just like, it was almost more of disappointment that you did not get it earlier.
Yeah.
At this point, almost everyone else in the program knew, just based on conversation. I would speak about a past boyfriend. I would speak about a relationship. Like, I think I even made a statement about marrying a man at some point. And Jason just did not pick up on any of it. And then so everyone else knew. And then when I said that to him, I was like, Jason, like, Jesus Christ, like I like date men, not women. And then he's just like in shock. You were just like, how did I not realize it?
Yeah. It was like 7 weeks at that point, 6 or 7 weeks. And I was just like, wait, it all makes sense. Like how did I not pick up on this before? I was so like confused at that point. And I remember dropping the weights. I was doing bicep curls at this thing, like talking to you, and then I just drop it like onto the thing. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I think it's a very relatable thing. If anyone's listening, they might relate to it in some way or not. You know, there's some people you just don't want to overtly come out to. It also, you feel that you've made enough hints that they understand. And then I found out Jason did not understand at all. So
0. So I thought that was like a really funny thing. And then eventually everyone else found out that I didn't know the entire time, and people were just laughing at me. You know, the guy who missed his flight to Indonesia, the guy who was completely oblivious to every situation like at hand. Yeah, I became that.
Yeah, and like we hung out almost every day, had a class together like 8 hours.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think even our teacher, we both were in the same class. The teacher even knew. Yeah, and I guess in Indonesia, it's an interesting topic because it's not socially acceptable. So it's more taboo, obviously, than here in America. So
do you want to talk about like why that is? And
yeah, so it's much more of a conservative country. A lot of it has to do with religious reasons, and it's just not as, I guess, socially progressive as, say, America in some aspects, including LGBT rights. I remember the first time I went abroad, there was like a raid of a LGBT club where they arrested like 112 gay men, and they imprisoned them indefinitely for crimes that here in America we view as human rights violations. And there was a lot of anti-gay rhetoric, especially coming from politicians at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
it's
world is fucked.
You step outside America. I mean, America is pretty fucked in itself in its own ways, but you step out, it's pretty fucked out there.
And I think it was a very interesting experience, especially going abroad as a gay man, and going into a country that was more religiously conservative. And I guess it was a lot of different intersectionalities because I'm a white male who didn't speak Indonesian very well. I was gay, but in a way, I guess, straight passing. So no one really knew unless I told them. So there was times when I did have to not bring it up, or I guess there were some certain people that I knew. I said like, oh, don't bring it up, otherwise they might not want to engage with me in some way, or they might shut me off, or something bad could happen. So
yeah, it's really shitty.
Yeah.
And yeah. But what was I gonna say? I was gonna say something. Shit, totally forgot what I was gonna say.
LGBT rights.
You were just getting deep there, man. Amazing. So during your time there, the 3 months that we were there, what do you think you got out of this experience? Like, what is the most valuable thing that you got out of this program?
I think now it's a year later, so I've been reflecting back on the experience. And we were both talking off, we weren't recording, how much we enjoyed being abroad. And I think you can tell that listening to us talk about it and reminisce that, I mean, me personally, me professionally, I know I want some sort of job or career where I can travel abroad, be abroad, and live abroad. So I guess that's probably one of the biggest takeaways, is how much I enjoyed the crazy experience, how much I enjoy being in a new environment, how much I enjoy meeting people who are from completely different walks of life.
Completely different, yeah.
Very different. And a lot of the friends that we made while we were there, like other college students, or even people at the gym, or when we'd go to a store or restaurant, we'd meet and chat with a lot of different people. And through my research project, I met a crap ton of people who are just from different backgrounds, and just meeting them, talking to them, grabbing a beer with them was just something I really enjoy and want to keep doing. So I think that's probably my biggest takeaway.
Yeah. So what are you doing now?
So after I went abroad, I was originally planning to go to grad school right after I completed undergrad in May. I left for Indonesia in June, and then I was going to come back in August, I think is when the program ended, and then go right to grad school. And then through the course of being abroad, I almost realized I wasn't yet ready. I wasn't yet, I didn't want to go to grad school. Just at that point, I knew in my life, I think Jason witnessed my existential crisis.
I witnessed it. Yeah, I was there.
I realized like it wasn't my time in life to go abroad. I thought I had this plan, as we all do, especially at the end of undergrad. We all think we know exactly what our life's going to look like. I realized, I said, this is not your time in life to go abroad. I just had one of those gut feelings, those intuitions. It was the same intuition that got me to Indonesia in the first place. So I listened to it, and I ended up just canceling. I withdrew my deposit. I said, really sorry. I sent my apologies to the grad school. I said, it's just not the time for me. So I came back home to Connecticut. I worked actually at a grocery store. So that's a good tagline, Fulbright to grocery store.
Yep.
Yeah, the glow up, the ultimate glow up.
The ultimate glow up.
I worked at a grocery store for a few months by choice, essentially, because I wanted something a little more relaxing than taking 7 hours of language class that you don't understand every day and waking up at 5 a.m. to call to prayer. And it was a really good experience. I got to do something simple. I literally just bagged groceries every day and met people and got a very different experience. After that, I went to go work at a lobbying firm at my state capital here in Connecticut. So I worked for, I kind of just said, I want to go understand local politics. I've been studying international affairs this whole time. I want to learn what it's like around here. So I went to go be an administrative assistant. I was a legislative affairs fellow. Sounds a lot cooler for a lobbying
really
firm.
Cool. Yeah.
Legislative affairs fellow. Find me on LinkedIn. Jason will include that below.
Of course.
I would basically follow bills that were coming up. I would sit in committee hearings. I would occasionally call up legislators and ask to set up meetings. And it was my first professional experience. It was the first time that I knew I had to be at work at 9:30. I had deadlines, and working at a lobbying firm, it's very fast paced. It's very, have this done by lunch. Here's an assignment. Here's a topic you know nothing about. Here you go. And it was almost like throwing myself into the fire. And I guess that might just be my personality, what I enjoy doing career-wise. I enjoy jobs like that. After that, I decided I was ready for grad school. So I'm starting University of Connecticut in the fall. I'm pursuing a master's of public policy with anticipation of pursuing a doctorate after that. Wow. Currently, I'm working at the Connecticut Office of the Attorney General for his public policy advisor, his political advisor, his legislative liaison. So I work on various policy projects that incorporate the role of the Attorney General.
That's really cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
So do you still use any of your Indonesian at all? Like since then?
Not enough. Since then, I think it's very easy to start to forget the Indonesian. I don't know how often you get to speak Indonesian.
Right.
There's not a large Indonesian community in Connecticut, other than certain pockets. So I've gone to a few conferences, like an Indonesian Studies conference I went a few months ago, and I got to meet presenters and talk with people who are from Indonesia. And so that was probably one of the experiences I got to show off my Indonesian language skills in a way. I'd be like, hey, look, I know something you might not have expected it. Other than that, I actually got my current job because my boss spent a year living in Bali as a freelancer, freelance author. Yeah. And he saw on my resume, he saw that I went abroad. He saw I was living in Indonesia. And, I came in for the interview in the first day. I remember thinking, I said like, oh crap, he's definitely going to ask me something in Indonesian. I'm not going to understand. So I remember brushing up on all my basic greetings. And it was probably one of his first questions, actually. He said, what did you do when you were in Indonesia? So I found that if someone else has some sort of connection and
Right.
they see that you have some sort of experience with it, I guess it's almost like a niche country
Hmm.
that people they're definitely going to ask about it. So I've had experiences like that where I've run into people and they've said like, oh, I got a Fulbright, or they might be former Fulbright scholars, and they said, what was your experience like abroad? And so I guess that's how I've ended up now using it. I think in grad school I'm going to be using it more when I'm doing research and doing projects involving Indonesia again.
Hmm. So do you want to talk about like what your experience was learning the language? Because I know we were taking, the same classes together. We were both
Yeah,
in the lowest level, very, very beginner level.
it was
Me,
basic.
it was
It
very
was,
basic. It was only 3 people in the class, and we were like the only 3 out of the whole cohort that had the basic training, and we just didn't know any Indonesian. And I'm Indonesian too, so it was pretty funny. Do you want to talk about like how you adapted to that? Because you were in Indonesia before, and you were learning the language still, and how like you have any tips and tricks for like how to retain that, etc.
I guess my first tip would be living there is much easier to learn the language. And I think you could agree with that since you took some classes before and then lived there for
Mm-hmm.
the experience. And it's much easier to learn when you're actually there just because you literally have to learn certain words, certain phrases, certain things that you wouldn't know otherwise. It's things you don't learn in the class. Like
Mm-hmm.
you and I, we learned a lot of swear words. We learned a lot of street slang. But that's only stuff you learn when you're there. Um, I think when you do go abroad for a language program, I recommend studying the books like they recommend, doing all the homework assignments, which I sometimes did not.
I never did the homework assignments.
I oftentimes got in trouble for not doing the homework
Yeah,
assignments. Jason was always like scrambling doing them in class as our teacher is collecting them.
yep.
Um, and I think those are very important. And I think that there's people in the upper level classes who really needed that. They were writing papers in Indonesian that they're submitting. But especially for us and at the elementary level, it's also very important to get that experience of how people actually talk by going out. When you go to a bar or a restaurant or a coffee shop, to actually talk with people around you,
Mm-hmm.
and you find that people, unless they're super annoyed with you and they're like, fuck that guy, fuck this international guy. People do, they want to practice their English, and then you get to practice your Indonesian with them. And that was one thing I found. It was really easy. And if you ever didn't understand a word, you say, oh, what does that mean? And then you might learn something you didn't learn in class. So I guess if you're abroad, that's how I'd say the best way to learn the language is. I am definitely the person who would go to the bars and uh, meet people and share a beer with someone and learn that way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so many crazy stories from just that alone. I mean, I have so many crazy bar stories from Indonesia,
Yeah.
let alone.
Yeah, that's another podcast in itself, I think.
There it is, Adam's crazy bar stories.
Yeah.
Um, I guess if you are here in America and you're not able to travel there, or say it's your language class, my biggest recommendation is to try and use the words from your classes in your dorm. So when you get back to your dorm, your apartment, whatever, just start speaking terms and phrases about things that are going on around you. It's going to be super annoying for your roommates, and they're going to go, we have no idea what you're saying. But
Yeah.
if you just start using them, it'll come more naturally. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it might even be annoying to yourself, but if you just start narrating your own life in a way, and you start to remember the vocabulary a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds really helpful, because that's what I did. Well, I like to converse with people, and I mean, I didn't really read the textbooks or anything like that because I was just a naturally lazy person. But everything that you said right now, like, yeah, that's probably the best way to learn a language, especially if you're abroad. Um, segue into the next subject that we're going to talk about. So, at the time when you were 22, when I knew you, or when I met you, you talked about, your existential. How do you say that? Can you say that?
Existential crisis.
Yeah, crisis, right? Do you have any advice for, a lot of the college students that are listening to this podcast about how to transition from college to the actual working life? Because it sounds like you are getting your life together. You know what you're doing now. At the
Yeah.
time you didn't, but now you kind of like have a general direction of where you want to go. So do you have any
Yeah.
advice for these students or people who are
I
graduating?
I
Like myself.
think if you asked me 2 years ago
Hmm.
if if I would be here where I am right now, I would not have believed you. I think I was so focused on going forward, so focused on graduating top of class in undergrad and then immediately going to grad school, top grad school, um, just excelling, keep moving forward.
Hmm.
I guess one of the things looking back is oftentimes I forgot to enjoy the now, enjoy the experience. The experience that's going on in your undergrad is so much, it makes you who you end up being, usually for the positive. If you
Hopefully.
enjoy the experience, you
Hmm.
are able to better prepare yourself for the future. I think the closer I got to that final graduation date, that scary day when you throw your cap up in the air and then you immediately people ask you what's next. That's the
Yep.
first question. Like you're not even out of your graduation robe yet, and your parents, your aunts, your uncles, your friends, they go, Jason, what do you do now? um, I think it dies down after about a month, so
Yeah.
don't worry everyone. I would say that I just try my best to accept that I have no idea what's happening. I have no idea where I'm going to end up in 2 years from now. I have a general direction, but when I had such a firm idea of where the plans were going, I realized I put myself in that box. And I think at deciding not to go to grad school, it was a big decision for me because I was on course to do it. I was going to move across the country for a grad school, and I was going in that direction. And then I reflected and I realized that's not what's going to make me happy. I I think it would have ended up me being successful, but I think I might have lost a really large aspect of my early 20s. I ended up taking a year off. I ended up doing really cool things. The coolest of all, obviously, you might be able to guess this, bagging groceries.
Hell. Yep.
But taking that experience, it really just made me realize things in undergrad I didn't yet see. It made me realize that I'm you're I'm gonna end up fine
Yeah.
as long as you have an open mind. You're flexible. You're gonna end up fine. Uh, it's really overwhelming when all your friends are applying for the same like 5 jobs at that one large company that you want. If that company falls through, there's going to be another one.
Yeah.
If there's one big tech startup you want to work for, there's always going to be another tech startup. Especially in LA, I imagine you're going to end up
Mhm.
in an okay position as long as you're open minded and you're flexible.
Right. From Fulbright to grocer, everyone. Adam
Yeah.
Murphy. Thank you so much for your advice. Did you want to, give a shout out to your own podcast that you are working for, or what are you doing? Can you
Yes.
talk
Oh,
about
yes.
the podcast that you're on?
So one of my side jobs I've been doing is I work as an associate producer on a podcast called The Lobbying Show.
Mm-hmm.
So after I worked for a lobbying firm, they created this podcast where they realized a lot of people don't actually know what lobbyists do. You have an idea, you say, oh, well, a lobbyist, like a staunchy old man who just talks to politicians all day. It turns out it's much more interesting than that. And then what the lobbying show does, which you can find on Spotify, basically anywhere you find podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
or on Twitter, Instagram. They interview lobbyists and government relations professionals from different fields, everything from tech startups to financial companies. And basically, we just look at their life, look at how they got there, and get any advice they want. So, highly recommend checking the podcast out if you're related, if you're interested in anything related to government relations, lobbying,
Mm-hmm.
or if you just want to have a listen to see what lobbyists do. So that's my shout out.
Available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other podcasting website hosting platform there is.
Yes,
Thank you so
you.
much. What's it called? The Lobbying Show?
The Lobbying Show.
The Lobbying Show, everyone. And everyone, here again, Adam Murphy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For the show. And I think a lot of people will take some very valuable lessons from this podcast, I hope. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. See you, bro.
See ya.
Peace.